A body. Something that almost didn't happen. Shelters are usually in the middle of nowhere, and even though we have been talking about that for months, I knew Zach was worried about my limb. But well, we still managed to catch the last train. We had to be leaving after breakfast. Yeah, right, but all that crap had to go into the backpacks. Or at least most of it. After Zack finally tightened the backpack and threw it on its back, she just peed herself out of excitement. One of the cans had punctured itself, and consequently, everything in the backpack was contentedly soaked in beer. My freshly glued shoes, yet again, happily drying by the fireplace.
From this corner, huh?
Doesn't matter which corner you pick, the mess is mess. A huge one. Yeah, quite a mess. And while washing, drying, repacking, etc., after the beer piece, my shoes got a bit toasted, and instead of sticking the glue, they came completely unglued. So I had to repeat the procedure only without time for the new glue to stick and dry. Well, it is what it is. At 3 in the afternoon, we finally left. The nearest and obviously most convenient body was the one at Loch Cora. There was about 5 kilometers hike along the lakeshore, rough and precarious terrain, but it was doable even with my limping leg. Ollie drove us up with the Land Rover, dropped us off at the last possible point, and drove back. He would be back in 2 days to pick us up again from here. Again, this was because of me and my lame leg. Zach usually walked from much further away. Now, talking about Zach, he had taken into account my limp, the terrain, and the heavy backpack, which can't be compared to my Roberto, of course, but he doesn't go off-road anyway. So, when Zach first mentioned his idea, I thought he was joking, but he was quite serious. He prepared and oiled the cart, then loaded the chainsaw so the cart would be worth the effort. So, for the most of the way, my backpack lay meekly in the cart, nestled snugly next to the chainsaw and the military sleeping bag.
Don't worry about it. It'll be alright.
Yeah, I was trying to walk fast and close enough that I could at least help by pushing over the bumps and berms. Of course, every time I had to argue with Zahari, as we were both stubborn as hell. But we still did manage not to kill each other at the end. I made sure I didn't get too far behind so I could help. Also, the time was advancing too quickly. We needed to get there in daylight and possibly before the rain, which was just about to start. So there was no time to get too carried away with pictures and videos, despite the scenic beauty all around. Of course, it was not without surprises and challenges. I was limping and trying to keep my shoes as dry as possible. That itself was difficult enough. So I thought that was the worst part of the trip, bouncing along that edge with a constant attempt to squid in the lake. That's what we both thought though. And there it was. Despite the backpack and the stroller, Zach still had to stop and wait for me from time to time. And my backpack ended up again neatly next to the chainsaw. I go first? Oopsie, a slight challenge for the cart. We did it together, mostly Zach of course. and moved on. I think this is where he wanted to really strangle me, but he hadn't brought a shovel. So he decided it was better to keep me alive and walking on my own. At some point, I might accidentally slip and fall, in the middle of the lake, for example. So, Zach had told me there was another bridge and we are almost reaching our destination. Yeah, there used to be a bridge.
And now what?
Well, Zach had gone looking for a place where we could cross the river. Except he was wearing heavy waterproof shoes, and I would be lucky if mine stayed in one piece through this challenge. So while he searched for materials to make me a makeshift bridge for the deeper part, I prepared to walk across the river barefoot. I quickly changed my mind, however. The water is icy, the rocks are slippery, and I'm unsteady with this bad foot. Nah. In the bottom of my backpack, the nice warmies Siobhan gave me lay comfortably. The idea was to use them in the body while my probably wet shoes dried by the stove. Change of the plan though. Better to use my shoes instead until my thermals dry. It turned out to be the perfect option for the river crossing. My feet didn't even get caught in the icy water.
Oh, that's damn cold!
By the time I got my shoes changed again, Zach had transferred the backpacks to the bank of this side of the river, and all that was left to do was pull the cart through.
I was hanging around town, just spending my time, out of a job, not earning.
We didn't have any other twists and turns except that it was already getting dusk.
You're a bronc fighter from the looks of your clothes. Your figures me right. I'm a good one, I claim. Do you happen to have any bad ones to tame? City's got one, a bad one to buck. For throwing good riders, he's had lots of luck.
Zach deliberately slowed down at the end. He wanted me to get to the body first and fully enjoy the experience.
To ride this old nag for a couple of days. He offered me 10 and I said I'm your man. A bronc never.
We arrived with the last rays of the setting sun and the first drops of the rain of the incipient storm.
In his buckboard he hops as he rides to the ranch. I stayed until
The body was clean and cozy. Some of the things Zach had left behind on his visit last year were still there, including candles and firewood. Luckily for us, we had enough wood to get us through the night.
the bio strawberry road.
There was no time for pictures though.
He's got
Zach set to work fixing the dilapidated stove, and I cleaned up the mess. The recent visitors had truly cleaned up after themselves, but that couldn't be said for the four-legged, sizzling permanent resident.
Brand was on his left hip. You necking over the long lower jaw. I can see with one eye he's a regular outlaw. I guess the blinds on him and it sure is a pride. Next his old belly right up to the sun. He sure is a sun-fishing son of a gun.
And then something to eat. A glass of wine or beer, a sip or several of whiskey,
The Mexican
an aromatic pipe, white music, comfort, warmth.
in Rosa's cantina, music would play and Felina would whirl. Out through
It was chilly at night. The place gets cold at the moment the fire goes out, and we didn't dare to leave those leftovers of a stove burning. Yet, in the morning, before I had even crawled out of my sleeping bag, Zach had the fire going and the shelter started filling up with warmth. This included a smoke screen too. Our clothes smelled of smoke for weeks afterwards. Coffee, breakfast, and my slippers still drying by the stove. As my uncle used to say, every pleasure in this life comes with a price.
Things gone in life, nothing is left. It's been so long since I've seen the young maiden. My love is stronger than my fear of death. I saddled up and away I did go, riding alone in the dark.
I haven't quite mastered how to pour with this thing.
Maybe tomorrow a bullet may find me. Tonight nothing.
Then a walk to the woods and a bit of wood collecting. I gave up quickly. It was too wet. If my slippers couldn't dry yet, no chance of drying my shoes for our way back tomorrow morning if they get wet. Better not to push my luck.
You see how there's bog here, and there's not here. So this would have all been farmland. This would have all been grazed land or that sort of thing.
Tonight nothing's worse than this pain in my heart. And at last here I am on the hill overlooking El Paso. I can see Rosa's cantina below. My love is strong and it pushes me onward. Down off the hill to Felina I go. Off to my right I see 5 mounted cowboys. Off to my left, right, a dozen or more. Shouting and shooting, I can't let them catch me. I have to make it to Rose's back door. Something is dreadfully wrong, for I feel a deep burning pain in my side. Though I am trying to stay in the saddle, I'm getting weary, unable to ride. But my love for Felina is strong, and I rise where I've fallen. Though I am weary, I can't stop to rest. I see the white puff of smoke from the rifle. I feel the bullet go deep in my chest. From out of nowhere, Felina has found me, kissing my cheek as she kneels by my side. Cradled by 2 loving arms that I'll die for. One little kiss and Felina, goodbye.
At some point we got back to the bothy and I got busy making dinner while Zach went back for the firewood, this time with the chainsaw.
Coming down, it makes me sad and blue.
He was running late though. In my mind, I had given him about 2 hours and decided if he wasn't back by then, I was off to find him. The 2 of us are alone in the middle of nowhere, and it's 6:30 and completely dark. I am off to look for him. And I found him, somewhere in the middle of the trail. He was coming back loaded with chainsaw, a wheelbarrow, and lots of wood. He was barely walking from exhaustion. We went back together, and to top it off, Zach got to cut and chop everything he brought. Stubborn as mule.
The falling of each tear, I think about the thing
The evening was like the previous one, only it lasted until 3 in the morning. It was wonderful. Warmth. Let's go back.
Yep. Well done its time, that's for sure.
On top of that, Zach kept the fire going all night
Look inside.
while I meekly went to sleep.
headed into town.
Well, with my calculations, it still burns better than that one we got in the dining room. Running down,
As I
walked in the dim cafe. I looked through the door.
I saw
Like Mo with her new love, and I couldn't no more.
No wonder none of us wanted to leave next morning. No way though, we had to be at the hotel. Ollie would be waiting for us at the arranged spot at noon.
And with a trembling hand,
We tidied up the place, took some pictures as we left it, signed up the visitor book, and said our goodbyes.
that good for nothing man, I think about.
For me, it was farewell. But as Gabriel Garcia said, don't cry, it's over. Smile because it happened.
They'll bury Flo tomorrow, but they're hanging me.
And that was the first thing I learned from Zach. Heat fields are natural filters, and the water from them is crystal clear and perfect for drinking. On our way back, my backpack was half the weight. No food, beer, water, or cans. Even the whiskey was gone, no idea how. So I carried it all the way without a problem. Zach was beastly overtired, barely walking, though he didn't show it. So much so that this time he didn't even try to argue and take my backpack.
Yes, I would. If I could, I surely would. I'd rather be a hammer than a nail. Yes, I would. If I only could, I surely would.
Was it into the water yesterday? I don't remember that.
Forest than a street. Yes, I would. If I could,
was that?
I surely would. I'd rather feel the earth beneath my feet. Yes, I would. If I
An interesting thing was that it turned out later that in organizing this adventure, each had thought more of the other. He took a stroller to make me lighter so I could cope with my sore foot, figuring he could carry me in case of emergency. No kidding, he could. One night he carried me upstairs to my room on the second floor, so I know he could. On the other hand, I agreed to take the cart for the sake of his fun of taking the chainsaw, figuring that I can help him to carry it in case of emergency. And so on and so on. We were such a great team, Zachary.